Tonight, the Splice Poetry Series has the distinct pleasure of splicing together Maya Penn and Laura Jaramillo. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to see you all here for the Splice. We always appreciate your presence. It is a poetry community, and we were talking last night with some of the poets about the South and its sort of poetry scene and what's happening here. And really great things are happening here. And especially in a place like New Orleans, where the language of things like safe space are certainly pertinent, but I think we have a unique one where it's like our safe space here is sort of like the eye of a hurricane. Talking outside amongst poets and friends, hear a couple gunshots pop off, then some more, sirens, things like that, but here we are in this little moment of grace. And so I just thank you all. And so for the first introduction, we have Sean introducing Maya Penn.
It's my pleasure to introduce Maya tonight. Maya is an interdisciplinary artist based in New Orleans, obviously. She's here. She's originally from Philly. Her mediums are film, special effects, poetry, performance, and music. The talent it takes to work in these diverse media vibrate throughout her poetry. The filmic colors, lighting, and framing, the practical surrealism of special effects, the motion of the body in performance, and the aural audacities and the lyricisms of her work. Maya's poems smelt these modalities to form new gold, not from alchemy, but from a deep knowledge of artistic chemistry and the poetic table of elements. Her litanies substantiate the paradoxical simultaneity of ambivalence and ecstasy in an experience of pleasure or pain, love or hate, the mundane or the extreme. These poems perform an erotic disassembly of sincerity and in spectacle. And yet the poems do not wallow in a moral ambivalence. These poems manage to dissolve the boundaries for those who may be awash in their wishy-washiness. These poems place the listener at the crux of our vulnerability. They grasp not onto, but into our anxieties and rearrange our sensibilities with humor, sass, blunt force, and warped syntax. A syntax not warped unconsciously or for difficulty's sake, but a syntax carved of marble, sculpted to show the grain and grunge of the poem's diction. Follow the syntax into these poems' sounds, images, and rhetoric, and you'll be rewarded tonight. Speaking of being rewarded, last weekend, Maya won the South Pitch Narrative Competition at the New Orleans Film Festival and was awarded a grant for She also works in cooperative development and helped start the Cooperation New Orleans Loan Fund. She has a deep foundation in peer education and collective art making. Nationally, you can catch her visual art in an upcoming Southern Exposure Gallery show in San Francisco. Locally, you can catch her in a full-time creature creation, the occasional poetry reading like tonight, and supporting fellow artists in their strange endeavors. Please welcome to the Splice stage, Maya Penn.
Wow, thanks, Sean. That was so nice to listen to. There's a lot of really good words put together, so thank you. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited. I love coming to this reading, and so it's cool to be able to perform for y'all. I'm gonna read from kind of three different sort of like collections of poems. So maybe it'll feel disorganized, and maybe it'll feel really like a fun adventure. So we'll find out together. So the first kind of group of poems I'm going to read is from sort of a like chapbook in progress called Nobody, about a person named Nobody, and has just been this exploration of like sex and violence and politics, and how sex is politicized and politics are sexualized and violence is sexual and sex is violent and the other one is the other one and they're all each other. So, yeah. Coarse Conclave. She was like looting a sitting fuck, waiting to waddle into the barrel of a hairy fist. Or so the neighbor spoke, through the earline of passerbys when they shouted across her clobbered corpse, "What happened? What happened? What happened?" Some said homicide or an ice cream truck, but the marvel was how she dangled, almost floating, from the second floor balcony. Her makeup immaculate, and her hair styled about her shoulders, it was godly. Like nobody died to float above her subjects, a guest at her own funeral where no one thought to check the rise and fall of her chest, which pulsed, reaching and tumbling as it always had, but she was much better liked in her cadaver endeavors. A blemish emblem of the neighborhood's notches. In the night, she unspeared herself from the steel of her assumed deceased, cooked herself a meal, returned by morning to slide the railing's knuckle into the scabbing entryway of her worshipped woe, to be everyone's easy way into death, everyone's something holy, everyone's look at that, what happened? Fucking American. Nobody thinks about Bernie Sanders and the mountains as he fucks her and air vent bites the soft of her thighs, press powder stegosaur roaring forget-me-nots. The blood in his face pulls his cheeks above her like boulders frame a dripping sky. Hiked out pit sweaty with that new messiah awe slaps her. She is the 3 a.m. plan for families and children for whom healthcare is like a bad dad, in and out and in and out and in and out, her fists and hands nailed to the wall below her. She will die, she must die, most will die for their kin. Some will die in the desert in between his beating brow, or find home in the hollows of hard work, white and blue. He works hard in the valley of her womb, climbing to peaks, holy handhold of all that is below us, and above us and behind us we put the horror of the last guy, and behind her she remembers the tender of no guy, everlasting fog teasing the sharp tongue of volcanic tweets, belching early 2000s race analysis into woked up yolk people barely butter and bred by bullets. It is the 1, 2, and 3 of the shrieking bed frame. It is the one that will straddle the problem like a throbbing cock. It is the beautiful of skin against rock, turned office, turned top 10 wanted listings on this side of the up and coming. Tells her she is wanted, with a hand over her face, limbs tied across both sides of the aisle, and stay still and just take it. What is one little ballot? It'll be over soon anyway, and maybe you'll choose to enjoy it a little. Things you don't want to hear on the operating table. At least this time I'm sober. Where is it again? I'm sure that will hold. I hope she bleeds less than the last guy. What species is the specimen? Can I put my gum wrapper here? Do not unleash the birds from that gushing orifice. She'd look better with a little lipstick. I bet you I can find the heart through the vaginal cavity. This is the worst I've ever seen. Her wound bouquets of bees, her knees, not what you'd think. Let's just take a little from there and put it over here. I'd never fuck a girl with this kind of bone density. That's a funny sound. I coughed into the gash. I'm getting hungry. Can we wrap this up? I have a wife to touch tenderly, waiting for me on a steel table, foaming at her open chest. The politics of experience. Nobody rooms with a boy carrying interminable blues beneath white skin. It boils, turns an afternoon hot where his fingers graze it. He bills nobody by the bite of ice cream and tests the withering of the paste's tube against the white of her teeth, leaves gum wrappers on her altar, the milk beside his bed. Once, she tripped into his tempest, mistaking marinade for marinate, so flung her timid rage and told him that he ought to learn a fucking omelet, that she was poured a body of blood that turns boulders to sand in the vulcanized thighs of dough-hearted men, but her skin stays tacky against the scoff of her enemy. He reminds her that a throat strong enough to swallow the sticks of lollipops doesn't mean we ever digest them, and when we rot into the earth, they are left there as they came, that the slime he leaves on saucepans is a cultural difference. He cites for her the non-magical sources of identity he has learned in a PhD program on the politics of experience. Sometimes, in the night, she'd catch him cornered in the couch, a panting mouse, peel him back like foreskin to find his ugly under the light of her stare until he's furred and purring. And when she finds his body strung from the ceiling, his mouth is the jagged eye hole of a child's ghost, fuzz on his face lifting against the breath of the air conditioner. And when she cuts him loose, she learns the thunder of a hollowed life, heavy in a way one rarely hears. Things to avoid saying on a first date. Interesting outfit choice. I'll meet you anywhere outside a 500-foot range of those trampled roses. I'm on terrible terms with all of my exes. Have you ever considered co-signing a loan? I have a +1 for a funeral next week. I hope it's not presumptuous I brought my toothbrush and my favorite flash drive. I love you. There's a hungry lion behind a door in this house. You look good wearing the darkness. I'm crazy for you. Want to lace you into my boots, crush something soft into the earth. You got a smile like a mugshot. You smell like meat before it's finished searing. Does anyone know where you are right now? I like a woman who's not afraid to close herself between two locks. Because how is one supposed to sweep a lady off her feet when she's so heavy with all those bullets up her sleeve? Rapid dream fire. Strange men enter her home by the thousands. She is fight and flight and flown towards a spate of fists in a house of useful things that always break. Key carabiners donning the walls, 3 hearts playing high-stakes poker, a few condoms lounging by a fire, trust blushing in a spliced reflection beside a bone and his friend Faith. She joins the jaws of a thrumming crowd to applaud the return of a moon held hostage, stands 5 feet too close to a pandemic cop, is ticketed a lap dance, holds a glowing orb whose light ebbs by truth, is always witness to women burned, girls dunked in acid, a nightmare about magic in her childhood home. Straddled by men who resemble her mother, her stomach used as storage for various secrets, and a bakery where an infected batch of flour has resulted in the accidental sale of killer pastries. Again, they pour through windows, send shards of winged glass flying blue above her with bowed beaks like cheek hooks, her salmon lips, a slippery fish hard to hold down but char worth the scars. Decides which space to seal herself still, gunned down in the corner of mommy's closet in Purda amidst her hanging skirts, her scent an umbrella against her yawning flesh, orange-collared in the nightmare of her elderly neighbor. Nobody swallows her cat, zips the woman inside the corpse of her daughter, hands curling around a peeled tangerine, soft like the limp wrist of somebody's baby girl. Sleeping, wake body knows this dream self-memory. From a past life lingering, nobody remembers the grating of skin as the bullet eats through and out where it rests, wearing her blood, mourning for her in a pile of mommy's clothing. Recipe for horniness. Sharpen your knives before finding the base of your tits, the savage desired, where it meets the simple of bone, and snick to begin before using your nails, before taking your hips, before dripping from the pinks of your meat, floor slapped with skin slides. Find your reflection in the shiny. Stand in effigy of a body simplified, unrecognizable from the cereal slurping flesh who framed the flooded sink this morning, unsatiated by the bruise of standing breakfasts. Tell her you like seeing her this way without her skin, that her unmasked intestines look good without glitter, and lull in the light of her undefended stare, cherished where this craved climbs into the cave of her thigh collops, breathes into miles worn, feeling full and warm, blood soaked through the naked nape of her peeled and pulsing neck. Phantom number 3. Since they last spoke, nobody had a daughter and an idea, but neither bloomed, and her wallets waggle with the whisper of seeds, thirsty and blinking, blind in the dark, waiting to breathe through a wound in the road, her walk home from her house after a man came inside, after he hurt her, and the street was the tongue of a beast she dared wake. This happened since they last spoke. The wind, the thing she lived, doors a promise broken, street like man, like all man, like she is man is cold, cold, like distant, like time stretched lounging, relaxed and unbothered by the impossibility of touch, touch like home, home like a placeless thing, thing like a younger nobody, winged and afraid to fall. From almost with him, once with him, like not anymore, like now. And since they last spoke, she saw him sitting at a table with beautiful women and felt ashamed of how foreign a face he wore when not wearing her socks, and an embarrassed smile. And these women donned mouths in the pleats of their eyes, consuming him and his isms, long fingers like flowering asparagus, debris at the base of his words. His laugh, the hollowed body of a road-killed thing, sigh, the quieting of an unattended goal, another strap slips slowly off a shoulder, another bowl of cereal, another night again, another morning. Recipe for fear of unclaimed potential. Yes, your destiny can bloom from the stem of anything, from the antlers of a soft petal limited edition Balenciaga, from the broomstick waved by a coarse hands across a sidewalk's glister, from a blistered knee, screwed so deep in the earth, the daisies are deflowered before they can be given to our lovers. But remember the child, who can always count on a secret handshake, after daddy laid his maybe down in the tip of a shovel that gets every grave dug the same shape and size. Where? Nobody lives in the lunch meat bedroom, in poorly aging wanderlust between a daisy and a steel box, in the corner of the party, in the smoking section of the hospital, across the guy who masturbates with his door open, in the clavicle of a misconnection, in the bilingual sword of an unborn daughter, in cataplectic pursuit of laughter, falling awake on the saddle of a dead horse, invisible to men, suspicious to women, in a polyamorous revolving door with white women, in the bloodied sheets of her ex-girlfriend's daybed, breath glued on windows to things that own her, on the ankles of her dying heroes. Nobody lives with an eye on the door, clutching the stiffened fist of a dead friend, a container of anticipated violence in the memory of breaking glass, among the crows, a fabled omen, and a dark thing with wings. I think that's all I'm gonna read from Nobody. So I'm just gonna transition to a couple of very, very new poems. This has been something I've wanted to write about for a long time, but been trying to write about just the exploitation of natural resources in Latin America, specifically the entire history of the United Fruit Company, and specifically lithium mining, which in Chile, where my family is from, has left a lot of communities without water, and some very specific ties that the things like the United Fruit Company actually have to New Orleans. Yeah, and just the relationship between the things that are imported, like fruit, and my memories that feel sort of imported across generations as well. So yeah, I'm just gonna read a couple of brand new poems. Sex in an electric car. Sunken seats wheezing beneath the meat, creased leather stuck on thrusts of nether regions of my rock designed for this divine, lying beneath my surface. My purpose lives in quiet cars, and stable moods and mobile phones. A few known negatives, dizziness, dead natives. You pull the clay under my skin into your need, seed a smile in my neck, I mined for sweat, your mind, my wet, your wind, hands planing my chest flat as the Atacama salts. From rock and brine, I brim, I bend, my battered breath a bouncing ball, I'm battery in progress. Charging towards deliverance, indifferent to the rigor until I'm blemished later, deep in my ore. The pockets of me that hold water are swam with the quiet of a blazing bulb, our busy voice concealed by the lithium swallow of your lucky engine, idling below me, masking me in my muted release. No one will even know until I go home and they ask me for my water, for my warmth, and was it worth it, and what was it like making love without the growl of a bird or the caw of a motor? And isn't it so cool, all those people who will get to where they're going now without having to destroy a thing? Do you know how Instagram listens to you when you talk to people? Yeah, so I was talking about planning an event, and then I got an ad that was called How to Plan an Event on a Small Budget, which I'm also like, how do you know my budget's small? I think that's very rude. So then I read this poem, and it's called How to Launch the Perfect Coup on a Small Budget. You'll want a red lip, a waiting ship, a crypt big enough, the decadent decor that only the allure of some limp bodies can produce. It's helpful to pack juice if you are prone to fainting spells, and prune your beard, their tears may curdle in your cuddled face. When you get there, they'll probably already have a way of doing things, but you'll sing through the barrel of their new toys, your tune, your way, you brought your own. Steal the couches, steal the rugs, take the bulbs out of the lamps, sample their meals, their wives wheel their cars into the river, take slivers of skin from their kin. It's just collateral, and you've been trying to get some sun. You've been trying to meet their sons, take their rituals for death, wipe your mouth with them, wet your wick, let them lick your lips. Don't eat the sticker, take a grandma, scrape out the language, put it on a sandwich. Sometimes the blood will bum you blue. You'll lose sight of the coup, but you should heed the mantra we recommend. Don't let them become another China, another Cuba. Don't let them eat the fruit that you grew. Remember, this is your coup, and you can cry if you need to. After the bath, it's the awaited after party. Stop with Bacardi, mezcal, greet your guests at the door. We keep scripts on site that we implore you to recite. Hello. It's good to see you again. Please, come in. Take some of what we took from you, and because you read the flyer and showed up childless before 2, tonight you can sit on any couch in this house, and it will only cost you everything. cereal box. Did you know in the 1900s, every banana you ate hung from a crime? In the early 2000s, every jacket I wore was my cousin's. Did you know the conduit for violence is memory, railways, my father's theory of tomorrow, a cello bleeding from the border of an origin? Did you know every laugh in my throat was once my grandmother's? Did you know they're still here, just doing business as rectified? Did you know what she was called? She died on the boat, and she'll stay trapped inside my mirror until I release her by name. Did you know about ballpoint pens, shag rugs, your linoleum floors, toothpaste, guitar strings? Did you know you can throw a grape into any knot of bodies and you will hit someone who's dying? Did you know it is actually very difficult to trip on a banana peel, but much easier to be stabbed to death by the cane knife used to cut their stems? Did you know about the unstill soft of the needle in between choruses, its hissing circle in between the earth and sky? I wish I'd known by the time my mouth was English, my first words would be second. By the time it's in your hands, it is deep in its decay. Did you know banana peels are perfectly edible, but sometimes best not to consume the woe in their work and only the inside sweet? So I just want to shout out this fact that I just learned when writing this week about this, which is that one of the people really directly responsible for one of these coups that was initiated for the purpose of keeping American interests around bananas alive in Latin America, Sam Zamuri, lived in New Orleans, and that the president of Tulane University currently lives in his mansion on St. Charles. Thought that was interesting. So just throwing that out there. Tell your friends. Am I okay on time? Okay, cool. So shifting gears again. This is a whole other little project that is about my grandfather, who I don't know very well. He doesn't live in the country, but he historically has been a very violent and abusive and intense person, and not a lot of warmth. And he's dementia now, and he's returned to infancy in this way where he's doing a lot of bird watching. And he has this new story about his life and his daughters and his wife that is incredibly tender and sweet and not true. But his sort of memory loss is my loss of access to a lot of history and information about my life that I don't know, and my lineage. And so I've been thinking about him, and also something that feels really painful to me about memory loss is just this very psychedelic kind of way of having memory association, where you smell something and it brings up a sound and you remember a person, and this sort of train that feels really destabilizing when you lose completely. So that's what this is about. They're all 4-line poems that I'm just going to read as one long poem. A bird drifts into a closet, and when the man opens its doors, a small house is growing inside. When he lifts his eyes to its windows, someone tells a joke that sends the dinner party spinning. Later, she finds him cradling a box of cutlery. On the table, he's arranged her every necklace. A bird does him the honor of being his wife, and they immigrate by a king-size bed. When he comes back with breakfast, she has already died. Later, her daughters remind him of something, maybe smashed windows or a glass of wine. On the table is a photo of a very pretty girl, probably from a magazine. A bird soars above them as they search for good ice cream. When he lifts the little girl, she cracks, old and purple. Later, he's left alone and finds every word to that song. On the table, he dances, drunk on everything that lingers, like a joke and the smell of fish. A bird shits on his head as he takes her to a house he's never seen. When he lifts her through its falling doorway, it is covered in his image. Later, he knocks on many doors, insisting he's lived through every one. On the table in the living room is a closed fist. A bird tells a brilliant joke as he peels a fruit. When he lifts his hands to the faucet, a dream slips through them about a girl with a good laugh. Later, he leaves the window open for her in case her parents go to sleep early. On the table, peels are piling, clementines, but mangoes when he can get a good one. A bird performs a ballet about violence outside his window. When he lifts his hands to applaud, his fingers turn to knives. Later, he wanders the streets, but people run away, screaming. On the table, he finds the rest of his beard, which he guesses he must have fingered away. A bird breaks in through the open window in his room. When he lifts his arms like wings, they take off together, singing. Later, he describes this urge to make apologies. On the table, he's left a list, how to care for the plants while he's gone. A bird wakes him from a nightmare about falling trees. When he lifts his body from the soaked chair, he can't believe how big his hands are. Later, he calls through the phone book to ask the shape of his father's chin. On the table, there's a map, and he holds it up in the mirror and cries. A bird sounds a siren before the people come. When he lifts his head to greet them, they rush to him like sheep. Later, he screams into a cup, feeling it get heavier in his palm. On the table, he pulls apart a finished puzzle, humming the words to the song that sweetened his first kiss. A bird wails in mourning and it unsettles the people waiting. When he lifts his head to find it, the sun looks directly at him. Later, at a movie screening, half the audience is abducted. On the table, the remaining members write the name of the film, but can never again recall what it was about.
Let's give it up for Maya Penn. Forgot my reading glasses. Aboutness. What is this poem about? What is this book about? What is this poet about? Aboutness. The majoritarian perspective of the American creative writing industry. Thousands of grad students trained in the doctrine roll about in thousands of slush piles, tossing thousands of poetic pieces for lack of proper aboutness. Hundreds of journals are 100% free of anything but aboutness. Alternatively, there's a lively tradition that suspends the tyranny of topicality, and in the North American tradition, we can go as far as back as Emily Dickinson, or fast forward to, say, Harriet Nolan, Linda G, or Lizzie Scalapino. Of course, in the greater American tradition, we can easily reference Jorge Luis Borges. But we might say there's less and less of this counter-institutional writing. But what remains and what is currently emerging is picking up a steady following, as is the case with Laura Jaramillo's writing. And that's why we wanted to get her to New Orleans fast, to embolden us to stick to our own unconventional poetic music, or as she puts it in her new book, Making Water, to drown, even to sink in the gorgeous difficulty of thought. Or how she punctually puts it in later in the book, Enough bottle caps together form a syntax. Or these minor tone, almost metaphysically inclined lines. Days speaking one tongue, years another, it makes you feel imaginary. I mean to say, there's always an inbuilt criticality, a mezzo voce running through all of her pieces. Jaramillo is a wonderfully polyvocal poet, an intradiscursive thinker. Many things are happening at once, and most incredible to me is her skill at flipping what would be the peripatetic into a centrality of, okay, spectral aboutness. I think it's captured well in this line. Time is a melancholy sign system. Money is a melancholy sign system. And so it is that through repeated forays into subtopical gesturality that Jaramillo pieces together the signifying grid work that supports a materialist political perspective, as captured in the zinger of a line. You go to the river to escape society, and then you become a society. Making Water is the book where all of this happens. Making Water is available here today. Lara Jaramillo is a poet and a critic from Queens, New York, living in Durham, North Carolina. Her books include Material Girls, subpress 2012, and Making Water, Futurepress of 2022. She holds a PhD in critical theory from Duke University. She co-runs the North Carolina-based reading and performance series, Paradiso. Let's give a warm Splice welcome, Lara Jaramillo.
Hey y'all, thank you so much to Rodrigo and Henry and Sean for having me. And thank you to Maya, who's fucking incredible, like just mind-blowingly amazing. Like, I've always wanted to come to New Orleans, but I tend to not go to places unless I have a reason to go there. And so this feels like the best reason to come here. And you know, we were talking last night amongst ourselves, amongst the organizers, about things that are happening in the South and why they feel really vital and alive in a way that, to me, they don't on the coast. I'm from New York originally. And I think that there's something really generous and generative here that, in my own small way, I want to contribute to in my series called Paradiso that I co-run with my friend Marta Nunez Puzols. And but I see it as being like really analogous to what the Splice is doing, and it just is like really, it feels really fucking amazing to be doing a reading in the South and have all these brilliant people show up. So thank you so much, truly. I'm gonna read from my new book, Making Water, and then I'm gonna read some other new stuff. And so, let us begin. Get on with it, shut up. Quarry. There's a will to drown consumer electronics that's distinct from revolution. Local kids smoke spliffs and cliff jump the quarry. To have perhaps re-encountered yourself in anger, natural as infancy in water. It doesn't smell, so somehow circulates quietly through generosity and impermanence, against the law, which is summer. There really is no discernible bottom. They describe people they desired as present or so present, edged by jagged rocks and slime. The middle is sun traversing evening water. A pat description of beauty is that which cannot last. This empire's lumber is sadness, saplings and weed. Afternoon's boredom, bodily anarchy. The Eno winds through landlocked towns to loop around the empire of mosquitoes. Hang a right at Sitco. To say she's present really means everyone else is just not really there. The theremintic cry of girls before they hit the water, grind with their granite lichens to sand. Light scatters through the canopy as a disco ball throws light. Lost for a time in the abstract forest of your name. Leave me now in the head holler. Water flips the sky's axis, the wild stars of diving and no sound. 2 of them were fucking in the lake, and I thought it wasn't real because you couldn't spangle your body in this mud with mine. To live utterly in the airy realm of things and see with borrowed eyes. I've never liked anything more than time. The rites of spring in the strip mall parking lot, what flesh can do in masses with a violet day through the slats. A tendency to float derealized above the afternoon, bodies on the gravel. People ask if in America we eat only hamburgers, dust that traverses the sun's rays down to its depth. Worn rope swing hung from ever younger quaking aspens. She swings off in defiance. The boys applaud a latent desire to be the lone woman among men, dimly recognized in the heavy heat, undivided, the one of us who won, not split. Everything I know is fragments swimming off into the private world of women. This poem is called Autoimmunity. Did you take the narcissistic parent's hand? The form should contain everything to contain totality. I said, yeah, you trade the hell of winter there for the hell of summer here. The mind cannot picture a Chiliagon's 1,000 sides. Last night we met the nicest guy high on crack at Kroger. Frost killed the organics. Failure not visible on body's surface yet. She picked up a small magazine called Time Cuts Us into Pieces. Autoimmunity. What difference is there to a blind man between one making water and one bleeding in silence? I urinated 19 times Tuesday. A woman encounters a cockroach and knows being. Consumed 1,300 calories. Beauty is no small part. Simulated care sunk in the circulatory system. To listen like babies, pink and swaddled, alone and far away. The velvet lather of voices automated against your aura, performed for other strangers who can't sleep. So many years I wanted anyone at all to touch my face. A language in which still life means dead nature, which is Spanish, French, and Italian. Naturaleza muerta. Time-lapse video traces peaches in a bowl from decay to dust, to too often catch the weft of life, woven through bleeding, since I was 25 and friends began to die. Friendship's liquidity. The first prohibition is touch, the savage din made by her knees moving under spandex in the yard, under her uniform skirt hitched up beneath the senses after a soccer ball. The birds sing at night, unbearable and real. Hematology. When you'd thought bone was the fundament, a year of infections. Announcing the presence of water, steam rises off pavement. In the throat, a hitch locates the circulatory sigh of prone bodies breathing in time, together. I write devastation in lieu of vomiting in your mouth, having been at all times the recipient and the perpetrator. Time is water traversing bones, a moment of silence impossible. The heart is an audible presence then. Bile, liquid, viscera, half-liquid, plasma, semi-liquid, and I'm so fucking thirsty. Because the intellect is sometimes obscured by passion or disease or sleep, a girl-brained body embroidered with hormones and sweat will escape utility, Let this account of what imagination is and why it is suffice. I'm gonna read a poem called Bread Wine, which is about my creative writing teacher in high school who died, and the book is partially dedicated to her. Bread Wine. Karen, art is a beautiful fool who won't feed us. All the theorists and writers in a swimming pool up by Columbia sloshing in erotic intrigue. So memory must become the bread. Here I am merely telling what you told me in life. Motherhood must be so saturated with the future solitude of children. With memory, the need for naive solutions wanes. Your laughter sets like a stain. The avant-garde buries its women like this, without flowers. Teachers are mothers for shattered cities or broken people who say vulgar things to teens. I'll never go around that town again, trying to take up the fragments, trying to know its contusions and lacerations. Looking out over the undulating sea of bored faces, he said, I want to be a horse, equally bored. Pharmacy City's hands are sparkling clean, and art in its pilled slumber. Gardens fertilized with women's forgotten body ideas. Her dissertation books forever lining the windowsill of a place on Midtown's west side. The long silent summer of my memory, watching kids dribble on the courts. When a teacher is laid waste, a student is someone who can do nothing to help her. To drown, even to sink in the gorgeous difficulty of thought. Oh, thanks, guys. This is the other South connection that I was talking about, besides with the organizers, was with Maya about the experience of being a diasporic Latin American. My parents are from Colombia, and I spent a lot of time there, and how kind of strangely alienating it is, and but also maybe there's too much made of that alienation, and maybe we have connections to other Latin Americans, and that has actually certainly been my experience. So I think it's not just the American South, but the South of America that we need to be connecting with, because they're really powerful together. So this is about that. Brain flowers. Play classical music for the plants. Shale that once clasped a shell to its heart ranged round the terrace. The gardener cuts the bark to show me it bleeds a milk. Perfect stairs drawn up into a rock, record of centuries. Rain, chickenpox, parasites, the purity of boredom. Droplets drip down the tips, inverted translucent bells of forgetting. He's gone now, but had been to study datura with the native people. She said that dense atmosphere, there, eyes stud the foliage. Vertigo running down the spiral stairs during light rationing. Process to powder in urban bars in the capital. Take off your shoes, give me your car keys, sit on the ground. The house's high-walled enclosures blink with broken bottle shards, bougainvillea below. Blue, green, brown, transparent, the complete anamnesis and amnesia. Suppressions of proper motor functions, the will. Memory loss serums introduced to the garden by its own fruit. They'll say, look at that fallen world, and we'll look north. Flying ointments for young initiates. My eyes are open, but I can't see. Piel Roja smoke climbs around afternoon sunlight. Sunday, listen to him speak on the effect of rock versus classical in plant growth. The farm, a cement house in the jungle, ground gives way with orange ferment, fallen vine. Plant sentient explained in the book with a Rousseau painting on its face. The lion eats his repast behind vine and bird of paradise. When asked to draw Eden, she reproduced this. Days speaking one tongue, years another. It makes you feel imaginary. Henri never saw the jungle. It was possible for him to paint that place of total non-identity in which the lion sits. I'm a primitive placeholder for meaning folded into the leaves of experience. Imagination was that fallen middle class world. The heart muscle by nature weaker in the very tall, circulating blood through long limbs, mocking the height of mountains in North America, pointing to our Alps in Chile. It was early when he died on the sofa. And then I'm gonna read one more poem from this book, and it's called War Machine. So much purple asleep in the green of the sea, luminous Carolina sky crossed with cumulus cotton balls. Colors recoil when military choppers blow back water's first 10 veils. Today, no planes circulate above Ferguson, Missouri. Edge of vomit, edge of everything. They were wrapping light around their bodies and shitting in the water. Spraying sunscreen into the atmosphere because my not body replaces my torso with air, and the war machine's contours are becoming in the honeyed light. Heavens rent with metal, sand kaleidoscopic beneath us. Swimmers applaud, beckoning the machines into the water. The special violence from which we suffer goes all pink and green, holographic in the evening sun, that all of existence could be a pleasure palace, that all of survival could be a boot to the neck of the other. Our time, an orchestra heard in the distance, sinking. We were so beautiful that day, all consumer metaphysics and pink meat ribboned with phosphorescent fat. I took 37 pictures of myself in the back seat to make sure I still existed. Animals on the road petrify when light hits their eyes. Let your body go like water, the car revolving our airborne forms, leaves and mud revolving the car, floating in silence with its terror and force through the sinews. She understood then that incoherence as dying splayed through that violent will to live. Curiously, the drone is a whale with no face. There are frequencies inside the chest that hum in absolute fear, and it moves as a mantis moves, cutting air with its not animal countenance. Pterodactyl circle and cacti hiss, edge of vomit, edge of everything. Heat maps mark the movement of blood-bearing bodies across desert sand. The operators open their interfaces ribbed with fire, tipped in blood. The men pull over to peek over the side of a ditch crew cut and rosy. The men, disappointed, were not hurt, wanting to have been heroes, or at least become the one holding the terror and force, the fire and percussive blowback, the shrapnel and tie cuffs, the paperwork of modernity. The men perform ice operations at the Spawn Ranch, at Aravaca, at Tabernas. They'll fake out a frontier in the desert of the real, if they have to, abide by some basic banality to serve, then oil the contours of their physiques. The one man with such a Barbie-like arc in his tit pectoral muscle, the technological veil, pneumatic, virtually weightless Kevlar condemned to bear the melancholy of RoboCop's sensuous pink lip. The pilots rip open a breach in being, becoming war gods in a sky from which the regular gods have retracted, to rend the veil of women, only to conceal their own faces, so they may never witness themselves being seen by their marks. Thanks, guys. I'm working on another project now that I think of as like a little bit of a diptych with making water, and it's called Burning Sequence. And it's kind of like, I feel that I wrote Making Water like from 2013 to 2018, and it feels like that book, my experience of that book and the things that I'm writing about feel like the real end of the 20th century, and the pandemic is the real beginning of the 21st century, actually. And so it's really hard to think under these new conditions and to write under these new conditions. So yeah, this manuscript is me kind of thinking about how to write under these new conditions. Burning sequence. Violet ash on nuclear wind, falling into baby's crib, raining through black night, catching on the inside of his canvas costume, burning, how it falls back on itself, soft diegetic rustling, index of our just not knowing. I was surviving reality, a rabbit through a copse. All that's been taken, never equal to that which is received. The city cool blue on a crystal morning before the river's tent through ritual broken. The nature of the sacrifice still latent. The fires are virtual, a scythe across liquid crystal, touching cyan, touching magenta, touching yellow. I look on, another observer of an observer, like anyone just playing out the late Styles puzzles. The terror accretes in our teeth, becoming music, television, and film. I'm just gonna turn this page. Weird as in wave out of time. Play the footage backwards and the girls actually explode out of the lake. The glass glitters backwards into the towers. Wave as in warrior, buckshot sprays through the social body at all times, at this time. A man walks into the theater halfway through the film. The dive reflex takes me. I think this is the end. The man dives under a seat to find his wallet. They get to the top of the holy mountain, minds suffering, disintegrated. Their guru says, "Is this the end?" No, there is never an end. Once all-knowing leaked from the dead king's head. They remove us from the theater for coming in 20 minutes late. The manager says, "I'm sorry, this is the end of the movie." Quicksilver on my tongue, the manager sweating, telling us to leave. When I notice then, we are all three afraid, fried. We run from the check at dinner into a movie theater with modern seats like sculptures. As the three protagonists hold hands, a fireball engulfs them and the earth. And we who have known the end from the first weep. The three of us holding hands across the seats. I turn to you and say, finally, a film where a depressed woman stars in the end of the world. What cleaves us, this mantilla of doubt that anything can be without mourning. In Shadows of Forgotten Ancestors, so this is just one note about this. This poem is based on a Sergei Parajanov film called Shadows of Forgotten Ancestors, and there's a figure in that film from Ukrainian folklore called a molfar, which is basically like a bad warlock, a bad witch, but a bad man witch. A bad man witch. In Shadows of Forgotten Ancestors, the molfar looks darkly over a snowy village. The one who will separate lovers, the one who with visions will kill dreams. The protagonist aches to return to all he's ever known, and yet we know he will never return. With all the yokes between us broken, all the candles burned to tapers, all the oxen wandering or starved, the village black rubble, the shells once cast, already spoken, the old songs forgotten as the fields go fallow, the supermarket shelves picked over, all the news deserting the papers, the units empty, silver towers climbing into silver sky, ignorant of human life, as someone makes their bed in the street, as another looks into the revolving face of a black orb that turns and turns as an eye turns in its socket, but not an eye, a cinematograph of the never-ending stupid present. The emergency demands it. We are castaways on the idea of the emergency. Leaving the theater, I wouldn't know until later that you were my molfar, wayward as Shelley, weaving my dreams to the grid of illusion. There's nothing more than this, than to go down into the catacombs of the subway as they burn. A man can convince a woman she is dust. And then there's like a lot of, thank you. There's a lot of like concrete poems in this manuscript, which you can't like tell when I'm reading them out loud, but this is the last one. And if anyone wants to see it, I'll show it to you. O sleepless nights, O sunless life, O sleepless kite, O sunless laugh, O sunless light, O sleepless knife, O sunless screen, O sleepless blue, O sunless white, O sleepless dew, O sunset life, O senile light, O sundry moon, O sleepless fights, O sunless heights, O sleepless dice, O sick fate, O sunless tongue, O stigmatic flesh, O stony tent, O serpent nerves, O summer tearing, O ruthless sight, O slipping sands, O uncertainty, O grace, O sunless life, O sun, O life. Thank you.
One more time for Splice, Laura Jaramillo. And obviously we're not going to forget Maya Penn. As I jot down my last notes here before we depart, choose your words wisely, says the poet at the top of the platitudinal edge, right before they cliff dive into the unknown depth. Before we go out and pursue what Maya might say are cadaver endeavors of our daily lives and our work, we have here some water, and maybe it can like help the skincare routine of our soon-to-be cadavers, whatever that might be. We have books for sale here from Laura. Let's center them.
And if you don't have cash, you can buy movie.
Okay, perfect. So it takes multiple forms of payment. Here we have a well to draw from. It's not quite science, but if you get thirsty, you buy the book, you can just open it, and then I think that kind of works that way. But we want to thank you again for coming here. Thank you for listening to these fine poets, and we will see you next month. Thank you.